Right now, the United States is rebuilding one of the biggest airports in the world, while 60 million passengers still fly through every year. In New Mexico, nearly 1,000 wind turbines just came online, and in Michigan, the US is finally building a lock Congress approved 40 years ago. 5 megaprojects all happening right now. Let's get started. Number 1. JFK Airport's $19 billion transformation. 16 miles southeast of Midwest Manhattan, on 5,000 acres of asphalt and concrete that opened in 1948, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is running the largest airport rebuild in American history. $19 billion, 5 terminals being constructed on, 2 giant new ones going up on the same footprints, 2 more are being expanded. $15 billion of that figure is private capital. The Port Authority structured the program as 4 separate public-private partnerships, layered on top of about $3.9 billion in agency funding for new roadways, a central ground transportation hub, and the utilities to feed all of it. The lease that lets these private terminals exist runs until 2060. Why? Well, it's actually simple. JFK is the busiest airport in North America for international travel. 63 million passengers passed through in 2024. The terminals doing that work were built between 1962 and 1998. And the Wall Street Journal has repeatedly ranked this airport, alongside its sister airports, among the worst in the United States. Also, the 2026 World Cup final is being hosted 10 miles from New York City. Officials did not want 60,000 visitors landing in a building from the Kennedy administration. The first fully completed project in the program, the new commercial program at Terminal 8, opened in April of 2026. The new Terminal 6 starts taking passengers later this year. The new Terminal 1 opens in phases through 2030, and the Central Roadway and Ground Transportation Center is targeted for late 2027. The annual capacity once everything finishes is 90 million. The structural takeaway is the financial architecture. A public agency rebuilds a generational airport without putting $15 billion on its own books. New York used the same playbook on LaGuardia. Newark followed. JFK is third in the sequence. Number 2. California High-Speed Rail. Move west, and California High-Speed Rail is the inverse of JFK in almost every way. Voters approved it in 2008. $33 billion, San Francisco to Los Angeles, 2 hours and 40 minutes. Finished by 2020. 18 years later, not 1 mile of revenue rail has been laid. The authority's own April 2026 business plan now estimates the full system will cost between $126 billion on the optimistic side and $231 billion on the pessimistic side. There is no funded plan to build it. The only segment under construction is in the Central Valley, about 119 miles between Madera and just north of Bakersfield. Roughly 80 miles of guideway is up. Track installation has not started. The first revenue service will run between Merced and Bakersfield, 2 cities whose combined metro population is about 2 million, on a corridor through farmland. Not the 8 million in the Bay Area, not the 18 million in the greater Los Angeles. The reason it started where the people aren't is a federal grant condition. Obama-era stimulus money came with a requirement: spend it in the Central Valley, on a defined construction segment by a specific deadline. So, that's where construction went. The flat, cheap part of the route, not where the riders are. The structural problem is now funding. Proposition 1A authorized roughly $10 billion in state bonds. Private investment never showed up. Federal funding has whipsawed across 4 administrations, and in July of 2025, the Trump administration's Federal Railroad Administration canceled $4 billion in unspent grants. California sued, then dropped the lawsuit 5 months later, calling the federal government not a reliable partner. The only stable money left is California's cap-and-trade revenue, locked at about $1 billion a year through 2045. The authority's own targets, Merced to Bakersfield by 2033, full San Francisco to Los Angeles by 2040, 20 years past the original deadline. Lou Thompson, the chair of the state-appointed peer review group, publicly called the project a dead end in March of 2026. Number 3. The new lock at the Soo in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. If you've never thought about this place, that's actually by design. The Soo locks are the most quietly important piece of infrastructure in the United States, and almost nobody who isn't paid to know about them does. Lake Superior sits 21 feet higher than Lake Huron. The Soo Locks are how every commercial ship gets between them. They sit on the St. Mary's River at the US-Canada border, and they are operated and maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers. The project under construction is a new lock chamber, 1,200 feet long, 110 feet wide, 32 feet deep. A near mirror of the existing 1968 built Poe lock. The new one is being built in the footprint of two decommissioned locks from 1914 and 1919. The cost? About $2.6 billion, almost entirely federal. By the Army Corps' own numbers, 88% of America's domestically produced high-strength steel, the steel for cars, appliances, weapon systems, refrigerators, depends on the iron ore that transits the Soo Locks. And 95% of that iron ore can only fit through the Poe lock. A 2015 Department of Homeland Security study concluded that an unexpected 6-month closure of the Poe would cost the United States $1.1 trillion in GDP and 11 million jobs. DHS called it the Achilles heel of the North American industrial economy. Congress first authorized this second lock in 1986, 40 years ago. It sat unfunded for 32 years because of a single Army Corps benefit cost analysis that assumed freight railroads could substitute for the lock if it ever failed. That assumption was wrong by about $5 to $8 billion and several years of construction time. Once a 2018 study corrected it, money started flowing. Construction broke ground in 2020, and substantial completion is targeted for the summer of 2030. Number 4. Sunzia Wind and Transmission in New Mexico and Arizona. Okay, $11 billion of private capital, the largest clean energy project in US history, paired across 2 states, a 3.5 gigawatt onshore wind farm in the Estancia Valley of central New Mexico, made up of 916 turbines. Plus a 550-mile high voltage direct current transmission line that carries the electricity across New Mexico into Arizona. The line terminates at a substation near Phoenix. From there, the power feeds the California and Arizona grids. The wind farm started sending test power to the grid in early 2026. California broke its all-time wind generation record 8 times in the 4 weeks afterwards. The owner is Pattern Energy, a San Francisco-based independent power producer. The financing closed in December of 2023, structured around Inflation Reduction Act tax credits. So without the IRA, the math doesn't work. The interesting part is the timeline. The project was conceived in 2006. Federal application was 2008. The Obama administration fast-tracked it in 2011. The Department of Defense fought the original route for years because 45 miles of it crossed the White Sands Missile Range. The New Mexico Public Regulation Commission rejected the line in 2018. Pattern Energy bought the project in 2022 and rerouted it entirely. The federal record of decision for the new alignment came in May of 2023. Groundbreaking that September, 17 years from idea to first turbine. Senator Martin Heinrich called the timeline a critical wake-up call. The project succeeded, but getting one transmission line built in the United States required negotiating with the Department of Defense, 2 state utility commissions, 3 presidential administrations, the Audubon Society, 2 sovereign tribal nations, and a federal appellate court. Litigation is still ongoing. The Tohono O'odham Nation and the San Carlos Apache tribe are in court over a 50-mile segment through the San Pedro Valley. Full commercial operations are targeted for later in the second quarter of 2026, with the rest of the project completing through the year. Number 5. Sites Reservoir in Northern California. Sites is a proposed $6.2 to $6.8 billion water storage project in the Sacramento Valley, about 70 miles northeast of Sacramento, in Glenn and Colusa counties. When it's built, it will hold 1.5 million acre-feet of water, enough to supply 7.5 million people for a year. It would be the 8th largest reservoir in California and the first major one built in the state in roughly 50 years. The engineering choice that makes Sites possible is this. Sites does not dam a river. It floods a closed valley, the 13-mile-long Antelope Valley, using 2 relatively short dams across 2 seasonal creeks plus 9 smaller dikes. Water gets diverted from the Sacramento River during winter and spring high flow events, pumped uphill through two existing canals and stored. When California needs the water, it flows back by gravity into the Sacramento River system and is carried south by the existing Central Valley Project and State Water Project plumbing. The design is regulatory. California has not approved a new dam on a major river since the 1970s. The Endangered Species Act, the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, and the CEQA litigation have made it functionally impossible. Sites is engineered around all of that. The dams sit on seasonal creeks, not a fish-bearing river. No salmon migration gets blocked. The reservoir even dedicates up to 372,000 acre-feet of its capacity to environmental purposes. The first reservoir in California history designed with that built into the plan from day one. But get this project was first proposed in the 1957 California Water Plan, 69 years ago. It has been reproposed at least 4 times since. The current iteration cleared environmental review in November of 2023 and got its federal record of decision from the Bureau of Reclamation under the Trump administration in January of 2026. The federal approval is the headline, but state-level approvals are not done. The State Water Resources Control Board is still working through SITE's water rights application, and the Section 401 water quality certification was denied without prejudice in 2024 and has yet to be refiled successfully. Construction is targeted for late 2026 or early 2027, first water and storage around 2031. Operations begin in 2033 or 2034, assuming continued litigation from environmental groups and tribal nations doesn't push the schedule. There you have it, 5 projects. If you want more of content like this, closer looks of how each of these projects actually works under the hood, that's what this channel does. I'm Tristan, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.